we'll have that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Fishman, and my company is called Hope Organizers, Inc. And I help people get organized. And one of my specialties is paper. I love organizing paper. And in my view, everything in life requires organization. For example, if you are starting a business, if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business and you need to get it launched and you need to get everything, well, you have to be organized. You have to get certain things to lay the foundation. And that's why everything in life has to be, at the basis is organizing. So tonight we have Alison Kollee, who is an attorney, and she specializes in ADA, advising people on ADA compliant websites. So I'm going to read her bio, and then I'm going to ask her some questions and turn it over to her. So Alison represents clients in a wide range of business, corporate, technology, internet, and digital media matters. She handles transactional matters related to vendor engagement and onboarding, brand building, protection and licensing, websites and mobile applications, intellectual property counseling and registration, marketing initiatives such as website and app development, giveaways, sponsorships, and loyalty programs, software and software as a service, SaaS, platform as a service, PaaS, data rights and privacy, data security, trade secrets, social media engagement, and other general counsel needs. Alison's clients range from entrepreneurs and startups to public and large private companies across several industries, including manufacturing, retail, both brick and mortar and e-commerce, hospitality and restaurants, media and entertainment, and more. Alison has extensive experience working with professionals from all backgrounds in business departments, which gives her the unique ability to speak the language of her clients to better assist their legal needs by understanding their business needs. Alison maintains the highest ethical standards in her practice while providing cost-effective solutions, which allows her to sustain long-lasting relationships with her clients. She prides herself in providing the best counsel to her clients and being able to translate difficult or complex issues into concepts which are easily understood by the non-lawyer. Alison not only engages her clients in the legal process, but also ensures that they make informed decisions when evaluating and onboarding new vendors. Prior to entering the world of private practice, she was in-house counsel for the Cheesecake Factory, Incorporated, for approximately 9 years. I don't know if that's a nationwide restaurant, but that's a big restaurant here in California, providing advice, counsel, and practical solutions to the management and executives in all areas of the business, including restaurant, bakery, and domestic and international licensing. Alison is a native of Southern California, growing up in the San Fernando and Conejo valleys. She earned a bachelor's in comparative religion and a bachelor's in political science from the University of Washington, and her Juris Doctorate law degree from USC, University of Southern California, Gould School of Law. When Alison is not working, she enjoys exercising and spending quality time with her family, including her firefighter husband, 3 adorable children, and 2 rambunctious dogs. Monitoring the chat tonight is MJ Finstrom, who is the owner of a digital marketing company called Hut Dogs. And so she is a marketing expert, and she'll be monitoring the chat. So you can put your questions in the chat, and Alison will either answer them as we go along, or she'll take them at the end. And you're welcome then to also ask additional questions at the end. So Alison, welcome. We're glad you're here. So let's start off by asking, when someone is organizing their materials, they're starting their business, they're organizing their materials for their website, what are the important things they need to know and to do?
Well, thank you. And to start off, thank you, Janet, for the very lovely introduction. And it's nice to see all your beautiful faces here today. Um, what I'm going to go into right now, first, I'll kind of answer her questions, but I'll just segue it by saying this does not constitute legal advice. As an attorney, I have to give you that forewarning. I'm giving you general overview of this area. And if you have any specific legal concerns, feel free to contact me and I'm happy to help you. And you can engage me to provide services. But this is kind of an overview of this topic. So to start, Janet, your question was, when someone is organizing their materials for a website, what are their important things to know and to do? So,
Uh-oh, she's frozen. Uh-oh, Allison, I don't know if you can hear, but you froze.
components of the website.
Oh, Allison, you froze there for a moment. Can you repeat? You were just starting to answer the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. There are certain legal components that you should have on your website. So it's a set of terms. Am I still frozen?
Oh, if people can maybe do a thumbs up if they can hear her, or
I'm not talking yet, so I apologize. Okay. Let me see. There's nothing else going on in my house, so hopefully I'm just not getting shoddy internet connection for some reason. I apologize for that. Let me know if you can't hear me again. So privacy policy is one, and this is always best practices to have. Depending on the information that you actually collect, it may be legally required. This is not just based on what you collect, but also depending on the services your company is performing, as well as the size and where you are located. All websites should have terms and conditions, and this is a contract that you make with the visitors from your site, and it sets out the expectations of the parties, and it can help protect you from liability. If you collect cookies, which most websites do, you have to have a cookies banner, which I'm sure all of us are very aware of. You go to a website, there's something on the bottom of the page, and it says, "We are tracking your website, your activity here. Would you like to accept cookies, or would you like to opt out?" And if you are collecting cookies, you need to have that. And then it should be accessible, and we'll talk about what that means. And you should have an accessibility statement. This is one of the best practices we'll go over. And this describes your commitment to providing a website that is accessible to all people, people with disabilities and people with full abilities. It should have a copyright notice on the bottom of the page. And this lets your visitors know that what is on your website is yours and they can't take it. You should have some data security measures for your website. And again, this is for websites that do nothing, and this is for websites that do e-commerce and do the gambit. You have to have some level of security to protect not only your components of your website, the integrity of your website, but also any information you may receive from the visitors to your website. And then you'll want to have a contact method. This isn't necessary per se from a legal perspective unless you're collecting personally identifiable information, but it is always best practice to have a contact method, whether it be an email, a phone, or a contact us form. So let me share my screen so I can show you what I was just talking about. I like to kind of talk about it first, then you guys can see. So here's the pieces that we just went over. And feel free to take notes, but again, this is recorded. And these are very important components that you should have on your website, in addition to the marketing components that you have on your website. Okay. So moving on.
If it's important to organize ADA accessibility and compliance, what is this? Can you tell us about this?
Yes. So we're all aware what accessibility means. You walk into a restaurant and it has a ramp. It has a ramp for people who can't use the stairs. It has the counters at a certain height. It has chairs at a certain height. The restrooms have the ability for people in a wheelchair to be able to enter. This is the brick and mortar accessibility that we all see and are aware of. But unless you actually live with disabilities, you don't see the other areas of public the public domain that you don't have access to. So the website accessibility issue is making sure that somebody who is hard of sight or hard of hearing has the ability to use your website. And for one thing, it's best practices, and we'll go into that later, but it's also necessary from a legal component. So what lawyers, wonderful lawyers, have been doing is suing businesses who have a website up that is not accessible. And we'll go into what that means and kind of give you some examples of what that looks like. But it's making sure that somebody who has a disability can utilize their screen reader to see the pictures on your website, or can hear about the pictures of your website, and can navigate your website and can utilize your services as if they were a person of full ability. So
can people hear her, or she's frozen on my screen? Okay. So
Something
Allison, go ahead and repeat that, because you did freeze there for a couple of minutes.
very weird. I'm so sorry. What it means to make something accessible is to make it understandable. You would provide text alternatives for non-text captions. You'd provide captions and other alternatives for multimedia. And some good examples of this is anybody who uses Instagram. When you go onto someone's Instagram page, they'll often, I follow a lot of workout people, they'll often have a caption of what they're doing or what the exercise is going to be. And we'll go, again, I'll have some examples to show you that can help dictate this, but it's making something that's understandable.
Oh, you froze again, Allison. Why don't you go ahead and
people have the ability to use it.
You froze there. Why don't you go ahead and give us some examples? Do you have some slides you can show, some examples?
No problem. So let me share my screen. And here's an example of color contrast. So you have something that's not accessible. If somebody is hard of sight, they will have a difficult time seeing the white on the green and the gray on the green and the beige. This is 2011. Target has been sued many times and also has tried to do best practices in order to make sure that their site is accessible. So here is Target in 2021, and you can see the contrasting colors between the background and the color scheme in front. This is making sure that you have the color contrast to a certain degree that is dictated by something called WCAG 2.1. WCAG is the accessibility benchmark. It is what people use to determine whether their website is accessible. It is what ADA compliance relies on for websites. Here's another example. So you can't rely on color though, because some people are colorblind. So if you have a website that has colors that are pretty similar to it, you'd have people like my mother who can't see certain colors, and they wouldn't be able to see that. They would not have full access to the site. You'd also need to label forms clearly. So if you see here, you'd want to do the above. You have your email, your website, your comment, that stays there, and it's not within the fill in the form, versus having your email, your website, and your comment, see how the color contrast for one thing is not very good. But for two, once you type in there, you can't see what the prompt is. So you want to make sure that people can see the prompt, whether they're writing in the form or not. Okay, so then here's an example of an accessibility widget. This is what some people do if they say, hey, I already have a website up and running. I don't want to spend the money. I don't have the time to make a new website or to accessibilize the website I currently have. So they'll do something using a company called Userway or Accessibility. There's tons of these out there that will put a widget or an overlay on the website. And what it does is this is the best way I can describe it. What this does is you have, if somebody's using a screen reader technology, the screen reader technology sits between the user and the website. And when the user, the person with disabilities, wants to see what's going on in the website, they talk to their screen reader technology, which then talks to the website, and it lays back and forth. Think of it like the intermediary. It's when your children are having a fight and you say, stop it, and you are the one who talks between the two of them. That's the screen reader technology. What the accessibility widget does is it brings in a fourth party and it bypasses the screen reader technology. It says, hey, we don't want to use your screen reader technology. We already have our own technology. We're going to go through this. It's your husband coming in and saying, hey, I got this. I'll handle the kids. And it bypasses you as a screen reader technology. Now, it's actually a better example than I intended it to be. So the widget is great. The overlay has some great functionality. The hard part is if you are actually a person with disabilities, your screen reader technology, you have already programmed to fit your own needs. You've programmed it to read at a certain screen text, a certain decibel level. You've programmed it as you like it. So you can see what you want to see, how you want to see it. When your husband comes in, when the widget comes in, they may not know your preferences, and they're just going to give it to you however they want to give it to you. And so while it can help to make the website more accessible, it may still run you into issues because somebody may not have full use of the website, if that makes sense. And feel free to ask questions if you want to on that. But it's a way to help people be compliant, and it was basically created by people who are full abilities to help people with disabilities. And the people who have disabilities are the ones who can best tell you what they need. If that makes sense. So I may share something else too, but I'll share it later. So I can give you some examples when you're creating a new website. So these are examples for websites themselves.
Okay, great. People are spending a lot of time and money making websites, but they don't understand the importance of organizing ADA compliant websites in an accessible way. Can you tell why it is so important to do this?
Yes. So let me stop share, and hopefully this doesn't mess up, because I think what happens is every time I stop sharing it, it freezes me.
Mm-hmm.
So am I frozen, or can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So the reason you want to be doing this is one, it's better business. It drives innovation. Accessibility features and products and services can often solve unanticipated problems. You're going to get less people calling you with questions. They're going to be able to use the functionality of your website, especially if you use a website that has higher functionality in it. It enhances your brand. It says you are a type of company that wants to do the right thing, that cares about doing the right thing, and you care about being inclusive for a diverse group of people. It extends your market reach, because people with disabilities are consumers and are people who need these services that you're offering, and you want to be able to provide it to them. It also minimizes your legal risk, and we'll go into the lawsuits in a little bit, because I have a slide that I think is pretty eye-opening. There are lawsuits that are happening over and over, both under the ADA and in California, in addition to under the UNRU Act in California, where they're suing, and they're just sending out, these companies will create, and these law firms will create a standard form complaint, and they'll just send it to everybody. And they're not just aiming for the Cheesecake Factories of the world, which is a nationwide cheesecake restaurant brand, by the way. They're also aiming for the doctor's office down the street, and the small mom and pop shop, and just a website that's just there. They are hitting everybody. And the reason they're doing this is because of money. They just want to get the money out of them. And most of these complaints and lawsuits that are being filed, they don't even get to the file stage, because what happens is they'll just send a demand letter and they'll get settled even before they get filed.
I know that Allison spoke to my organizers group, and one person called her before, as soon as the ad went out that she was going to be speaking, to say she had been sued. And then after Allison spoke, I was on a follow-up call with my organizers group, and somebody said that their brother had, in their business, had been sued, and I think they called Allison. So it's out there, it's happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, there's several photo organizers on the call tonight, Allison. So they're going to be showing a lot of photos, some videos. Do you have, maybe this is you've already addressed it, or maybe you're going to say more later, but just keep that in mind, that because they're heavy with the photos on their websites or video snippets on their websites. Maybe you have some specific things you can say to them.
Oh, no, I do. And I appreciate you. Anybody who has any specific needs, that's helpful to know. And I'll go into social media as well, because Janice had asked me about that, and how it relates to social media. I mean, people would be surprised. There's over 1 billion people around the globe. That's 15% of the world's population that cannot access most of the internet's information or services. So, you know, we care about the web. We care about these lawsuits. That's business. That's just the nature of the beast. But I think, you know, just being good humans, it's also making sure, you know, we're all just trying to do the right thing. The hard part is when you're trying to do the right thing and they're saying, well, you're only 85% compliant with WCAG. You're not 100% compliant with WCAG. We're still going to sue you. You still need to pay us. And some of these lawsuits are starting out at, you know, $30,000 a pop. So they're not small beans.
Yeah, that's pretty frightening for the small entrepreneur who, you know, we've had to use much of our own money to start our businesses, and then to have it all just taken away like that for lawsuits.
It's very frustrating. And, you know, there's what's happening too is so the ADA, when it was drafted, and Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which relates to government brick and mortar stores and also government websites, the ADA has never been updated to apply to websites. So how it's starting to apply to websites is by lawsuits. And anybody who's an attorney on here can attest, you know, that's sometimes how the law is created, is through the courts. And so the ADA there are lawsuits that have come down that have said, hey, yes, it applies to websites. But there's some certain caveats, and depending on the state you are in. In California, however, you have the Unruh Act, and the Unruh Act, in addition to the penalties and other monies that may be due under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Unruh Act also provides for civil repercussions and monetary damages that a person who files and is victorious in a lawsuit, they can actually get up to 3 times the actual damages, but no less than $4,000 in statutory damages for each offense. And it's not clear whether a violation is each time I go to the website, or a violation is each failure to adhere to WCAG. So there's a lot of things that are still being fleshed out with this, because it is, you know, it's still something that is relatively new, but it's definitely the hot ticket area of the law right now.
Yeah. As one organizes a website from the outside, what are some best practices as they relate to accessibility?
Okay, hold on. I have one more slide to share on the last
Okay.
piece. No, you're good. So here's the slide I was kind of referencing, and this is some information on the increase in lawsuits. So it's pretty jarring if you look at this. So in 2017, you had 814 federal court lawsuits for website accessibility. It increased in 2018 and 2019, and it's steadily increasing. Now, it may look, hey, well, it had a huge jump from 2017 to 2018. What happened from 2018 to 2020? Well, for each of these lawsuits, it is estimated that there are 10 times as many demand letters. So if you look at that and you think, hey, there's 2,500 lawsuits, 20,000 demand letters that are going out. It's just taken off. This is one of those things where in California as well, it's taken off even more because of the undergrad and the ability to get monetary damages there. So this is just something, it's, you know, what Janet said, it's hitting everybody, unfortunately. So if we're able to help, and my goal is to help my clients and to help people protect themselves from the outset so they don't have to deal with it. So that's one of the risks. So go ahead, sorry.
That's
Janet,
okay. So let me ask you, do most clients that call you up and they say, Alison, here's my website URL, take a look at it and review it? Is that how people approach you normally, or give me an explain
so
that?
When people approach normally, it's, hey, I just got sued. What can I do? I just got this demand letter. What we're trying to do is we're trying to talk and educate people like we're doing here, to inform them of this issue, because most of the time, most people, when they're getting a lawsuit for this type of thing, that's the first time they've heard of it. They're like, what, my website needed to be accessible? What does that mean? And so I'm not a developer, but I do work with many developers on this. I know companies who offer both an automatic search as well as a human search of your website to go through it and tell you, hey, here's where you're falling short, here's what we can fix, and they'll help you fix your website. What I do for my end is I will provide the advice and counsel, provide the know-how, and educate people on what to do, what to look for, how then to do it, and who to engage. When they're engaging their vendors, I can help them by making sure, and what we'll get into is making sure that in their contracts, they are protecting themselves. And the best practice would be to shift the liability and the risk from your company to the website developer. So who's responsible for making the website ADA compliant? I'm not in that area of expertise. My website developer is. So you shift the risk to them. So there's different strategies that you can do, both from a front end of having an accessibility statement, as well as from a back end having, so here's some best practices here. So you can you want to engage service providers to design or make your website accessible. So if someone's going to come to me from the outset, I'm going to help them to find the right website developer. I'm going to try and help them find somebody who's aware of this issue. Some companies now have full departments that are dedicated to ADA accessibility. You can, like I said, add language into the contract where you're putting the onus, liability, and compliance onto the party that has expertise in it. Something else that I've done that I've assisted clients with is making sure to work with their developer that when they're creating, so if you're constantly updating pictures and uploading things, there's ways where you can create a template. And this template can help you. So if you do change things within your website, most of us aren't website developers. That's not what we do. If we're a marketer like MJ is, we want to be able to go in and change things and not muck up the whole thing. So I work with clients and companies to try and help them to understand that, and work with the developer to say, hey, here's what the client needs, and put it into the best language I can, and make a template that is foolproof. Make a template that they can change things and it's not going to change the accessibility on the website. I'll draft an accessibility statement. And this is something, there's different ways you can do it. Here's an example from Costco. So Costco's accessibility statement is pretty robust. It says we're committed to accessibility, and here's some things that we do, and it gives a list of things that we do. Here is another example. It's a little bit shorter. So Harbor Freight Tools, for example, actually puts it at the bottom of their website. So it's not a page. So the Costco one, if you look down at the bottom, you have security and privacy, do not sell, privacy policy of Harbor Freight. Costco has it down here where you'd click it and you'd go to it. Most companies do it that way. Harbor Freight Tools has it on the bottom of their page where you can't miss it, and it's very short and simple and sweet. For any difficulty with a screen reader or because of a disability, please contact us. And it's saying, if someone tries to file suit against you, you can say, hey, why didn't you just contact us? We're here to help you. You could have a live person on the phone with you, and it's another measure of protection for you. And here's another example. So Pottery Barn does it like the Costco way, where you have a click to go to an accessibility page, and they have a smaller statement, more general. We care about you. We strive to make this accessible. And then another thing you can do, and this is ongoing, if you have one website, you create it, you never touch it, it's static, you don't have to really go into it that much. You will want to update it and occasionally have a review of it, because you want to make sure things don't go stale, that it stays accessible, privacy law changes and so forth. You want to review it roughly every year. However, if you're updating pictures on your website, if you're updating videos on your website, if you're doing anything to update the marketing materials on your website, you'll want to have some type of tools in your tool bag to help you make it accessible. And one of those tools is the automated tools, such as a Site Improve is an example of this. Site Improve, Accessibility, other tools where they'll crawl your website and tell you it's roughly, they'll tell you how accessible it is. There are some, they're not 100%, these tools. They do miss things, because as you know, when you have automation, it's just not as good as having a human do it in this type of area. So there's an estimation that they catch about 70% of the things. Now, 70% is good. And if you have a simple website, it may catch even more. If you have a bunch of PDFs, if you have a bunch of videos, if you have a bunch of other areas of your website, if you have moving pieces, GIFs, then it may catch closer to the 70% range. You can do user testing and consultants. So I work with a company pretty regularly that's a website developer, but they, as part of their services, they'll offer a monthly monitoring program where they actually have a person go in and review your website. They'll crawl your website, they'll give you an accessibility score. And sometimes that can be very expensive, $10,000 a pop. Sometimes it can be really inexpensive. The company that I work with is really reasonable for what they provide. I'm actually shocked they're able to do it for the cost that they give it for. But what those tools do, either the automated or the person, is they provide you with a report. At this point in time, this website was 85% compliant, and they'll track it. So that way, if you do get these lawsuits, you have some documentation, some proof to say, no, aha, it's this compliant, or we're doing our best, aha, here's what we have, we're not going to pay that much, type of thing. So those are some of the best practices that you can do. So now another thing you can do is when you're building a website, so from the start, is using a website tool. Say you're building it yourself, or say you're using a website developer who works off of a certain platform. I'm going to stop my share just because I'm going to share something different. I want to show you Wix. So we're all aware of Wix, WordPress, some of these tools that you can build your own website from. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So this is Wix. Wix actually has on their platform the ability to make a template off of an accessible website. So say you're like, hey, I'm just starting out, I'm going to build my website, and I don't want to spend an arm and a leg on it. I just want to build my own. I don't want to hire a developer. It's going to be simple. You may choose to go this way. And what I highly recommend is using one of these accessible templates. And if you want, I can, it's just wix.com/accessibility. Some don't have it. WordPress, I don't think has it. But there's a lot of these websites which do, and it gives you a template. It gives you best practices, and it helps you have the features. Now, is it always going to be fully accessible? No, they can't guarantee it. They won't guarantee it. They also offer these automated services. afterwards, and they give you guides, and then you can hire an accessible partner. So they're really trying to sell themselves, but at least you have a template to build off of, that you're starting with something good. You're not just starting with something that you have no idea whether it could be accessible or not. And that's why it's also good. Say you have a more robust business and you want to hire a developer. When you're talking to them, make sure they are aware of this issue. Make sure they can build you a site that captures the concerns here. Because if they can't, then they're not the right company to go with.
Allison, what about GoDaddy? That's a pretty popular company for building websites. Are there templates?
They may. I haven't looked into GoDaddy, so I can't say offhand. But what I do is, if you're interested in GoDaddy and you say, hey, I want to use GoDaddy, which is large network solutions, another one, there's tons of them. Do a search on their site for accessibility and see what it comes up with.
Now, what about like my site? I take all these recordings every month that I'm interviewing people, and I have a whole bunch of them linked on my website and then on YouTube. Is YouTube, how do all those videos on YouTube become?
Okay, so let's go into social media. So social media, when you're talking about the platforms themselves, the onus is not on you as the user of the social media platform to make Facebook accessible. You don't have any liability for Facebook's accessibility. However, if you are posting content onto Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, I don't know, there's a whole slew of them, and I know I'm on the younger side, but I am not well versed in how many there are. What you need to be doing is making sure that the content you're posting is accessible. So what are the best practices for making sure that the content you're posting is accessible? So one, you want to be sure that the business information that you have for that particular platform is completely filled out, so that the business listing and everything where you have a presence to put your information, it puts your information correctly for the user or screen reading software in the first place. So if you have your information incorrectly, the business information filled out incorrectly on one of these platforms or even on your website, and someone using a screen reading technology is trying to figure out more about you, they're not going to have the correct information. So that's first and foremost. Second, you want to clean up the URLs that you share online by shortening them. Oftentimes you'll see like a hyperlink. You'll want to use a shorter link to your site. You don't want to have this long Allison.com/it/awesome/social .. 213. It's super long. So what you can use a tool called Bitly or a Google URL shortener, and that will help to you can make it a memorable word or phrase. It's also just good practice, but that will help to make it more accessible to people. 3, when you're using long hashtags, so hashtag love my life, you want to capitalize the first letter of each word, because screen reading software will have an easier time knowing when one word ends and the next word begins. It makes it easier to interpret. When you're posting on Facebook, you want to make sure that you add an alt text for the photo. So let me share my screen because I have a capture of Facebook here of what an example of where you can find this information. So Facebook actually has this information available to the user. So how do I edit the alternative text for a photo on Facebook? Facebook is aware of WCAG. They're aware of the accessibility issues. So they're giving you the tools. You can ask these questions and get the answers and help of how to, and they'll go through the how-tos with you. Now, if you don't have the time to, or you have your company has the monies to hire somebody, it's worth the money just to hire somebody and have them get it all done, because this will take you time to go through each photo. The same thing with when posting on Twitter. You want to make sure you add an image description for the photo. Instagram, now it does and it doesn't. So Instagram does not have a way to add alt text or captions like Facebook or Twitter does. So you want to add the alt caption a few lines below the actual caption on Instagram. So let me, oh, hold on. I'm talking to this here. Here, you can see what I'm talking about here. Can you see this, or are you still saying Facebook?
I can see best practices for social media.
Perfect. Perfect. So let me see if I can, I'm trying to share, I'm trying to get to the, this link that I added in here. So I'm going to stop share just so I can get to the link for you guys. Okay. So I know my head's going back and forth. I have two screens. So, okay. So here's an example for Instagram. Now, I follow a lot of people who work out, and what they'll often do is they'll have something on the screen where it says group building exercises, good, bad, and they'll have like little blurbs. That's good to have, but that's not for the screen readers. That's for people who are scrolling in the doctor's office and don't want to turn on the sound. What the screen reader is looking at is here. So you have the image description. So on the right, you see Jacksonville, BU, and do you want to learn how to fly a drone? At the bottom, you have a dot, 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 and then you have an image description of a photo of a drone. So when someone's using a screen reader, they'll be able to pick up what that says, and that describes what's in the photo. So that's the same thing if you're having on your website. It's called an alt text. When you have a picture on your website, each photo should have an alt text, which describes what's in the photo. And you want it to be pretty clear of, say you close your eyes, paint me a picture of what's in it. And you don't want to be over the top, but you do want to be able to have the person understand what's in the photo. It's a picture of a cluttered kitchen. Next picture. It is a picture of the same kitchen without clutter and everything is organized. So it's that type of thing that you would put as alt text. And if you're using one of those, your own website builder, you'd put that in. If you're working with your website developer, they would put that in, and they should be asking you to make sure that the captions are what you want. So for videos, you asked about videos. So hopefully, keeps going back to this. I'm trying to go to the link. It's not allowing me to go to the link here. There we go.
So if I have a thumbnail of the person that I interviewed, and when you click on it, it takes one over to YouTube. Because it's connected to YouTube, then I don't have to do anything with that.
No, so here's what you'd want to do on YouTube. So YouTube does have, I think most of the platforms now have the ability to add on their own closed captioning. So you can add it. However, you should always check it, because what they're doing is they're trying to take what you're saying and they're going to, I think she said this, I think she said that. And so it's always good to check it, because you can go in and say, oh, I didn't say move it to the left. I said something completely different, and you can change the language of the closed captioning so it's accurate. So they'll have it, but that's best practices, and you'll want to put that there. So you could have subtitles and captions on YouTube. So here's an example. Again, YouTube Help has the ability to help you to provide this self-help for yourself, to understand and make sure that you're creating accessible content for people. So this is what I do. What I do in this area of my practice. Now, if I'm doing a contract, I'm going to do it all. If I'm writing the website terms and conditions and the privacy policies for people, I'll work in tandem with them to draft something. But as it relates to website accessibility, my value is not in drafting the accessibility statement. My value is in guiding people to understand the tools that are available to them to either help themselves or to engage the correct vendors to help them. And that's important. Another thing that I want everybody to be aware of is you may or may not be able to get it. I would talk to your tax attorney or with your CPA, but there is an IRS tax break for making your website or physical location accessible. So if you're spending money to make something accessible, you can, I believe, get a tax credit for that amount. Now, don't quote me on this. I'm not an accountant and I'm not a tax attorney. So this is not legal advice, but it's something you'd want to ask about. Because if you're spending money on this, you may, not only is it a business expense, but it may also be something that you can write off on your taxes.
We do have a tax attorney online.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Darren. In a few minutes when we're done, maybe you know the answer. If you don't, that's okay too. Allison, do you have any other things that you'd like to share? Because we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I know people have lots of questions, but I want to make sure.
No, I mean, I can go into what these burning things are, but it's like the burning your captions, what those mean, caption of a video. But what I'll do, I mean, if you want, I can answer questions, and that way people who why don't you
tell us real quick about that burning image, and then we'll take questions.
Okay, so here's, I keep pressing the wrong screen. There we go.
It's an interesting screen.
Yeah. So I see all my tabs open now. So now we're going to how to burn in captions. So for Facebook. So again, there's so much readily available online for how to do yourself. But if you have, it's going to take a lot of time, and your time is worth money. So either you engage a vendor to do it, or you do it yourself. But I think the best tool you could have in your toolbox is knowledge. So if you can inform yourself like you're doing now, and learning from this hopefully you're learning from this webinar, in this interview, that you can then take these pieces and understand when someone's BSing you, or understand if they're adding value, and understand what the best practices are, so you can be a active participant in your own business. So here's an example of how to burn in your captions. So if you want, if everybody wants, I can send you guys these links outside of this video, outside of this presentation, and then you can. So all hail the king. The caption was burned into this website, to this picture.
So even if a video is done, you can still go back and burn captions.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, wasn't that presentation? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm going to go back to this, because the good news is that, and I think I mentioned this before, if someone's in a doctor's office, they're not going to want sound. I mean, they may not have these in. And so videos and pictures that have captions tend to perform better on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter because of that. So questions, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Wasn't this fascinating presentation? I know I'm going to have to hear it several times, because there's so much information that you can't just absorb it in one hearing. But it's extremely valuable information. And we're going to take some questions now. Let's see. Let me get over to the chat. And the first question. Do any of these lawsuits actually go before a judge?
Yes. There are multi-million-dollar ones. There are smaller ones. Here, let me stop sharing my screen so you can see me. The short answer is yes, they do. The smart people right now are settling, but you have these big ticket players. You have the Winn-Dixies. You have the Targets. You have the Domino's. There's a Domino's case. These are actual cases that have come before that go forward to a judge, and some of them have ended up in verdicts. And so the answer is yes. But like I said, the majority of 10 times as many that are actually filed are actually just demand letters and are settled outside for $5,000 a pop. So even if you just get a demand letter, sometimes it will still cost you money. Most of the time it will, unfortunately.
And for a small business owner, $5,000 is a big chunk of money. Yeah,
so that's why it's better just to do it right the first time and have all these tools in your toolbox. You get this lawsuit and you say, I have a report and I've done this and I've done that. My site is accessible, go pound sand. And all you then have to pay at that point is an attorney like myself, or if there's another attorney on here who can help you to respond to the demand letter. And that's, you know, a couple $100 versus several thousand a pop. And I can speak from experience from being in a public company. They received them multiple times a month. So having that ability to say go pound sand is huge.
Here's some more questions. How difficult is it, or how much more expensive is it to set up a website with ADA compliance? Are there turnkey ways of setting it up?
So yes, so if you are, like I said, if you're setting it up yourself, I recommend using a tool that has accessible templates like the Wix that I showed you. And that's, I'm not necessarily all for Wix, but it's just one of the examples that I can pull out of my hat. They actually have templates that are accessible to begin with. So even if you muck with it and mess with it, you're going to start with something that's good. And then when you run the reports, you may still need to fix certain things, but you're not going to have to fix everything. If you're starting a new website and say you have a more robust website that has more functionality, you want to hire a website developer that knows what they're doing and is very aware of this issue and knows how to create something that's accessible. So I think if you're starting from the beginning and you're creating a website, is it too late? No. If you've already created a website and it's up there, is it too late? No, it's never too late to fix it because it's just code. You can go in and you can, either you do it or you have a developer do it and you fix the areas that need to be fixed. But it's always helpful as the business owner to understand, you may not know the nitty gritty, you may not know the coding, but you have a general understanding of what the issues are because then you know the questions to ask and you know what to look for, which is huge.
Here's another question. If my company is an LLC, doesn't that protect my personal assets? Okay,
so that's a different question as it relates to whether your business structure protects you personally. And that's a little bit more of circumstance by circumstance. Generally, an LLC is supposed to protect your personal assets, yes. However, case by case, it depends. the lawyer's favorite answer is it depends. So it depends on whether having the LLC actually does protect you. But if you form an LLC, you care enough about your business, not just to protect you personally, but also to protect the business. And you don't want to go under because you're getting all these accessibility lawsuits. That's not why you went into whatever area that you went into. You went into the area you went into is to provide the services or the goods that you care about. And so this really is another layer of protection. You have to think of putting on terms and conditions to your website that limit your liability and add for indemnity and protect your copyrights and your trademarks and all of your brands, and say, hey, we have third-party links, but they're not us. So, look at their policies. You need to have those pieces on there to protect you. You need to have a privacy policy to protect you. It's just like, hey, well, I have underwear on. Why do I need to put on a jacket? It's only 40 degrees outside. It's the same type of thing. It's making sure you have the whole outfit. So that way, when you go into below freezing, my sister lives in Wisconsin, and as a Southern California girl, when it gets below freezing, we make fun of her because I don't think she leaves her house. But it's making sure that you have the right gear on. You're protecting your company. And you're making sure you put your best foot forward. That's part of the reason why you have a website and you engage in social media, is because you're trying to grow and build your brand and extend your reach. And so it's just making sure when you're doing that, you're doing it in a way that's not going to put you at risk.
Before we open up and take questions from the group, Darren, do you have any information about that tax credit for making your website accessible?
No, not offhand.
Okay.
There very well may be, but I don't know of it. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, that's a good question for like a CPA too, to ask. Yeah. So let's take anyone else that we went through the questions in the chat. Does anyone else have a question that they would like to come off of mute and ask Alison? while you're thinking, I just want to thank Alison very much. This is the third time I've heard her speak, and I just can't get enough. It's just so interesting.
Thank you.
So interesting. And next month in November, I'm going to be interviewing a photographer who specializes in documenting property, video documentation, because when one wants to organize an inventory in case of a fire, in case of a divorce, in case of estate planning, it's really important that you inventory all your valuables. And next month I'll be interviewing that person. Any questions before we let Alison get back to her fantastic work? Well, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you so much, Alison. It was wonderful. And I look forward to seeing everyone next month.
It's my